What's going on, Creator Factor fam? This is your host who loves you the most, Ozeal. And today we're going to be rolling out this new segment, y'all. This segment I'm really excited about because it's something new, something fresh. We call it Creator to Creator. And this is a segment where we dive deep. Just going to be raw conversations with everyday content creators like you out there creators who are grinding, who are learning, who are growing, who are building their own communities and brands from the ground up. And my mission is simple. I just want to deliver relatable insights, real stories, and create a space where content creators, once again, like us, can connect, grow, and find value together, right? And today I'm chopping it up with a good friend of mine. I was going down the list of yo, who are the creators I need to reach out to who are making some waves and making some moves, out in the playing field. Out in the playing field, no pun intended. This cat I met actually a few years back. Actually, I was on his podcast a few years back. Forgot what year. Nick, you're going to have to remind me. But we connected ever since. Yeah, we've been friends. And he's the co-founder, co-host of the Twin Toros, Houston, Texas podcast, a creator and host of the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. Creator Factor fam, let's welcome in the building our very first creator to creator session with my boy Nick Stevenson in the house. Nick, my man, what's good, H-Town?
I didn't know I was the first, man. What an honor. Thank you so much. And I love that introduction, man. And I wore the OG shirt for you today, the original.
Don't do that to me, because you know what, man, because I wanted to show my people out here. Look, y'all, Nick,
how long we've been rocking?
Nick, yeah, we've been rocking for a minute. So This is a t-shirt that Nick gifted me after being on his show. But the logo was dope, and it had a great time being on the show.
Yeah.
The best part?
Yeah. Officially certified, man.
Yes.
R.I.P. Smells like middle-aged spirit.
I know, right? Officially certified. Ozeal the Bastos, a.k.a. the Podfather.
Yes, sir.
Hashtag Pod Houston. So, my man, I'm still rocking it with pride, and it's
I appreciate that, man. And let me just tell,
it's amazing.
It's an honor to be the first, and let me just tell all of your listeners something that most of them probably know about you. I'm so grateful to you for everything you do for this podcast community, everything you've done for me personally, the passion that you lead with, the example that you set to everyone else on how to overcome some of those difficult moments that happen with all of us creators, right? I think you've experienced it all, so you are able to take what you've experienced and share it with us, man. And I've got a lot of great things going on for me right now, and you're one of the people that I have to give flowers to and thank, man. So thank you so much for inviting me to do this. Like I said, I didn't know I was going to be the first. What an honor. Like all the people you could have thought of, you thought of me first, man. Thank you so much.
No doubt, brother. I received that. Thank you for the flowers, man. I appreciate that. Man, when I was thinking about this segment, I was telling you in the green room, that this is something that I've been thinking about for quite some time, simply because I want to create a segment that allows everyday content creators like ourselves, again, to connect, grow, and just find value together, and those that are really building their brands right now, that are in the trenches. And you're one who I have seen in different stages of their creator life, from the early podcasts, which I was on, and then taking a break, transitioning out of that, and then re-emerging, rebranding yourself and this whole vibe that you're doing right now with the sports podcast. But before we dig into that, man, I'm curious. I don't think we talked about this. When was the first time you discovered podcasting?
The first time I discovered podcasting, I probably saw Joe Rogan and was like, hey, that's cool.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy, bro?
Who's that? At the time, I didn't realize, at that time, there was a lot of celebrities and stuff kind of starting podcasts, but I didn't really think of that as something just the average Joe could do. Mm-hmm. Probably until one of my buddies started one. Shout out to Chris Kahn. He was actually one of my producers on Smells Like Middle-Aged Spirit later. But he's the first person I knew personally who started a podcast, him and another buddy of his. And they would just kind of get together and chop it up and drink a few brews, and sometimes it got a little crazy in there. And he invited me to come on one time, and I was like, this is fun. I think I could do this. And I started asking some questions like, hey, man, because in my mind, I thought, man, this stuff probably cost $1 million to make a podcast. You got to have all types of resources, and you got to have, I'm imagining in my mind, like if I do a podcast, it needs to look just like Rogan's does, right? So that was probably like 2018, 2019, when I first got the idea of like, hey man, maybe this is something I could do. I've told you this about myself multiple times though, Zeal. I suffer from chronic self-doubt and chronic belief that anything that's negative that could happen will happen. That's probably passed down to me genetically. So it's one of those things that I battle with. And at the time, I kind of let it remain one of those things that I thought about, hey man, I'd love to do that, but never really put forth any effort to do it until my hype gorilla, who was my original co-host of the Smells Like Middle-Aged Spirit podcast, my brother-in-law, Chris Clark, he's the complete opposite of me. Like, he will try anything one time and he doesn't care if he falls flat on his face. He's going to go give it a shot. And so he kind of pumped me up with that same energy. And he wanted to advertise for one of his companies. And at the time, he was trying to advertise on the radio, Ozeal, and they told him he needed $11,000 for a 30-second spot. And he said, what? He said, if I had that kind of money, I wouldn't need to advertise on the radio. So he actually started reaching out to local podcasters, and he found out that the podcasters were charging a little bit less, but they still wanted, a good $500 for a 30-second spot on their show. And then a light went off in his head. He said, man, my brother-in-law said he wanted to start a podcast. Why don't I start a podcast with him? Then not only can I advertise my business for free, but then I can charge other people to advertise their business. So, man, he went, as soon as that light bulb went off in his head, he came straight to my house, man. He's like, did you still want to start a podcast? I remember you saying you want to start a podcast. And I'm like,
let's get started. Here's a mic. Come on, let's go.
Right.
Let's record.
I was like, man, I've been thinking about it. He's like, no, man, we're not thinking about it no more. We're doing it. And so he was the one who really pushed it and got the ball moving on that. And then I say he kind of handed off the baton to me because he was so focused on his other businesses, but he lit that spark in me. Like once I got my equipment in and it came in the mail and I started setting everything up and I heard myself in my headphones, I was like, okay, I can do this. And it got to the point where, I really took off with it. And unfortunately, eventually his other business took off so big, he couldn't even remain on the podcast with me. But at that point, the train was already rolling, man. So I'm very grateful to him. I always tell people in any story, there are more than just the main subject, right? There's several unsung heroes or several people who helped you get to the point that you're at. And I got a shout out to you, to my brother-in-law, to my buddy, Chris Clark and Chris Kahn. I get them confused sometimes, but they're really the ones who lit the spark that led to everything that I have going on right now. So I got to give them their flowers as well.
And you did over, if I'm not mistaken, over 100 episodes of Spells
close to like 90. Close to 100.
Okay, so you were up there.
We got close to. I had some other content on there that I didn't label episode numbers, so I put probably over 100 pieces of content out there though. But I would do separate shows where if my partners weren't there, I just called it a off the script type of show. And so, but yeah, there's probably at least 100 pieces of, and it's still out there if you guys want to go check it out.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure we'll link it up. We have to link it up because that was a fun episode that we did together.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of
really
it.
Enjoyed it.
This is the great thing about podcasting, Ozeal, is, and me and Chris, we talked about. He came back for the very last episode when we laid the podcast to rest, and we talked about how from 2019 when we started to it was 2022, almost 2023 when we stopped. We had a snapshot of everything that was going on, not only in our lives at that time, but in the history of the world, and it's just really cool to think that that's still out there. Like you can go in real time and see what our reaction to the whole COVID pandemic was. We were recording together when we first started, and then COVID happened and we were not supposed to be in the same room, right? So we had to find a way to keep going. So we did the show where he was on the phone and I was live. It was just a crazy time, man. And to go through all of those steps, that's, as long as I pay my host fees, my great grandkids might be able to listen to the Smells Like Middle-Aged Spirit podcast and, a decade or two from now. So that's the beautiful thing about this medium. It's one of the things that I love about it. And so, yeah, I'll, as long as I can hang on to Smells Like, I'm going to. I want it to stay out there so that people can really see where it all started, right?
Yeah, that first one is always a special one, man. I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned earlier that you struggle with self-doubt and, second guessing yourself. And I'm curious to know, what was the biggest lesson you learned about yourself, after putting that podcast to rest?
Yeah, it's still something that I struggle with. And I'll be honest with you, Ozeal, once again, we talk about unsung heroes. I was almost like depressed after Smells Like ended that I sold all my podcast equipment. I actually sold it to your good buddy, Dwayne. Because he had some podcasters that needed some more mobile equipment, and I was using the Rodecaster, the original one at the time. And after I ended Smells Like, it had been a good, like, my studio's upstairs in my house. It'd probably been a good, like, 3 months since I even climbed the stairs to come in here. And I was just like, and my wife could see a difference in me when I wasn't podcasting. So one day I got rid of all the stuff, and I didn't tell her about it, of course. And she came up here and everything was gone. And she said, well, what happened? And I told her, oh, I wasn't using it. And, somebody else who needed it, who's going to put it to better use. I sold it to them, and I'll hang on to the money. If I want to start podcasting again, I'll start up some other time. And she looked at me in the eyes and she said, Nick, I know that you probably mean that from the bottom of your heart. But if you don't go and replace that stuff right now, that something else is going to pop up. Because one of the reasons my show ended is because life was lifing, bro. And it was hard to keep it consistent. I was raising 2 teenagers and a young preteen, a lot of stuff going on in life, working a full-time job. And it just became difficult to coordinate with 4 other people. Like, hey, how are we going to get in the studio and record every week? And a lot of times it was, if we were supposed to record a show and it didn't work out, a lot of time it was because of things that were happening in my personal life. So once I laid that to rest and I didn't have that podcast anymore, it was a relief for like maybe the first couple of weeks, but then you start getting that itch, right? And it's like, man, like, why am I not doing something that I love to do? I know I love to do it. Why am I not doing it? And it was really my wife who pushed me. I went the next day and I bought new podcast equipment, and that was the day I got the idea for the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast.
On that same day?
On that same day, 100%. Because I asked myself, okay, I need to keep doing this because, number one, I'm a complete grouch when I don't have something like some hobby to keep me busy. And my wife knows this. She doesn't want to keep setting me in the corner. So I said, what is there out there that I could talk about every week that sometimes the subject is just going to present itself? I don't have to do too much research, too much, brainstorming about finding a subject. And I said, man, I love Houston sports. I talk about it every day anyway. I might as well sit on the microphone and talk to, other people who love Houston sports. And that's the same idea, or the same day I came up with the idea of starting my own media company, Stevenson Media, because what my wife did for me, what you've done for me, I wanted to have the opportunity to do for someone else, someone who didn't believe that it was possible for them. Maybe they've thought about podcasting, or they've thought about being a digital creator, making a YouTube channel, anything like that. But something in themselves was limiting themselves. I wanted to pay forward what had been given to me and be a motivator to say, hey, you can do this, and let me show you how I did it. And my goal was not to necessarily just show them how to do it and then leave them hanging. I offered to produce a few people's podcasts if they wanted to, but I gave them both sides of the coin. Look, this is really easy. You can, well, I don't want to say easy. You are able to do this by yourself, or I can do it with you and help you. And I just wanted to infuse that same passion that you guys infused into me, and that same motivation to just tell that voice in the back of your head to shut up, because that voice in the back of your head, people need to understand it's lying to you. Every time it tells you you can't do something, or something's too hard, or you're not talented enough, nobody cares what you have to say, that's all lies. There are people out there who care about what you have to say. And once you embrace that, and you embrace that, you form a community and you get around other people who have struggled with that same self-doubt, that same negative talk, and you realize like there is an audience out there that wants to hear what I have to say. Once that clicks in, man, I still deal with it every now and again. It's never going to go away. You tagged me in the ESPN Houston Rock the Mic competition, and I dealt with self-doubt the entire time I was in that thing, man. And I was leading the entire way through all the rounds, But every step of the way, I was like, man, I'm not good enough. Why am I doing this?
All came back again, huh?
It all came back, man. But I didn't stop. That was the difference this time.
Yeah.
Like I said, I told that voice, stop talking. Shut up. Yeah. I'm not listening.
Before we transition into that, because we're going to go where there was that pivotal moment, which that's where I saw things really shifting and for you. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Before we get to that, because that's really exciting, there's a few things that you mentioned that I want to pick up. Yeah. Number one, for our everyday creators, one of the things that Nick mentioned is that, there was still, he was dealing with a lot of self-doubt and, life was lifing, right? And I think a lot of you that are watching or listening to this are going through that as well. You're building up your brand, you're passionate about your message, you're starting a YouTube channel or a podcast, you're building your brand online. And it's challenging, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Whenever you do have a day job, some of us have kids, our husbands and wives, and we have a lot going on, and figuring out not only to manage your time to be able to do the thing, but also navigating the emotions that a lot of creatives go through, where, the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome, and, just nobody's listening, nobody's watching, let me give up, it's not worth it, and I'm confused. And, you go down the rabbit hole of all these emotions. And I think a lot of creators can relate to what you said about that, but you kept on pushing through. And another thing that I want to pick up on and I want to share with our audience here is that you pointed out that this podcast, you were like, I still love this thing, right? So you knew for a fact that this medium was something you were very passionate about, you're great at. And you were like, what is the thing that I'm passionate about that I can speak endlessly to with friends or on a show? And I think that's something for creators when they come to me and I'm coaching them. And almost 99% of the time, y'all, and Nick, I'll share with you, when they come to me with a monetary goal to say, I'm going to do this for business, I almost know it's a no-go. Like 99% of them give up because of the fact that the thing that's going to push you through is having that passion behind the mic, showing up because you're passionate about sharing the thing that you're excited about. So I wanted to point that out for creators that are watching and listening, is that you got to be passionate about the thing, because it's going to be hard. And there's going to be times where you don't want to give up. And especially in the beginning, there's so many moving parts and nobody's watching or listening. You're going to see those numbers, and those numbers are going to tell you the lie. They're going to show, they're going to whisper into your ear, hey, all this stuff that you're doing, like, you're doing the most. You've got life, and then you got this, but this is really not paying dividends. Give up. So anyways, I wanted to highlight that because I feel like that's super important for our audience to be able to pick up that despite going through that, bro, you were like, you know what? I'm passionate about sports. I'm excited. You rebranded, having great support. Shout out to Wifey for supporting you and saying, hey, listen, and that's important for our creators out there, having a good support system. But man, I just wanted to highlight that. And then again, pushing through through that pivot. Then I tagged you on the ESPN. There was an opportunity. You responded to it. It was just for context, for people who don't know, there was a contest, a challenge, I believe you want to call it. ESPN Houston was putting together and was trying to gather some of the top podcasters in the sports industry. And then I saw the opportunity. I immediately thought of you. I was like, divine intervention. Like, oh, this is God saying, for real. Give it, pass it to your boy, pass the ball to your boy. And I did. And dude, you did the thing, and then talk to us about what happened after that. And you could talk a little bit about the podcast, because the podcast is called Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. So talk about that, man.
And I want to give you some credit for something you were just talking about too. You were telling me forever while I was doing Smells Like that I needed to maybe niche it down a little bit more to find something, a subject that I was passionate about. And in so many ways you were right, because as much as I love Smells Like, we talked about a wide variety of topics, and it became difficult at times to find things that I really wanted to talk about. Sometimes if we were doing something related to pop culture, it almost felt like you had to talk about it because it was relevant to other people, but I didn't really care about it. And that probably came through. I can honestly say our last season probably wasn't the greatest.
There were moments when you start feeling it, huh?
There were moments where I was like, we're just kind of going through the motions here, And so I can admit that. And I love everything about that show. Like I said, there's nothing like your first. But I can admit that one of the things that when I sat down and decided, okay, I am going to do this again. And when I landed on Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, I thought about what you said to me. And I thought Houston sports is it's a happy medium. I don't have to talk about one team. I can talk about 3 teams. Or 4 teams, if we get the Dynamo involved. So now I've niched it down a little bit more, but it's still broad enough where I'm not going to get bored with it. So I got to shout out you as well, my mentor, the Podfather himself. You're one of the people who helped me narrow down my focus so that I could do something passionately every week. And it became a lot less challenging, obviously, to do what I'm doing now. So to the ESPN thing, you tagged me in that post. And shout out to Joe George and to Samantha and Abigail over at ESPN Houston. When I first started doing sports podcasting back in March, I reached out to a lot of radio guys, and they weren't really feeling us, bro. They weren't really feeling the podcaster. You know, a lot of these guys spent a lot of money to go to universities, to go to the Syracuses of the world. You know, that's Bob Costas College, right? Like that is broadcaster U, and they're very good at what they do. But then some 40-year-old nobody who, you know, bought his podcasting equipment online, has no formal training whatsoever, comes along and is like, hey man, I do what you do. And they didn't really like that, at least some of them. But I've got to give ESPN credit, man. They are the ones who put out that olive branch to the local podcasters and said, hey, we see what y'all are doing. We like it. Maybe you can come do it with us. So the competition was called Rock the Mic. I believe they settled on 20 original podcasters. Some guys who had been podcasting for a long time, some who just grabbed their phone and said, hey, I'll try this, and made a video. And every round, they would narrow it down based on, you know, you'd put in a video that you use kind of as an audition. My first audition video, I actually didn't know the public would see. I probably would have brought the gas a little bit more, if I'm going to be honest with you. But by views and by votes, that decided who would make it to the next round. And that is when I really saw, Ozeal, something you talk about often, the power of community. Because there were creators in this group that have thousands of followers on YouTube, many tens of thousands on Twitter. And I got more views and more likes on my videos than all of them because my people showed up for me. All I had to do was reach out to a lot of people in Pod Houston, a lot of the people who were my friends on social media, the small group of people who rocked with me for Smells Like Middle-Aged Spirit, the small group that was rocking with me for Houston Sports State of the Union. They showed up and showed out, man. And I led the entire way. I got to go to the final, which had the last 4 creators.
Made it to the final 4, huh?
Yeah, made it to the final 4. I went out to Carbach Brewery, man. And you know what? That's the first time I was really, really successfully able to, once I made it to the final, I was able to successfully shut that voice off in the back of my head. And I was like, I'm going to win this thing, bro. Like, and I was in it to win it. And then I showed up, and it was one of the coolest things I ever done, man. I got to get on the FM airways on 97.5 in Houston.
That's crazy. That's
and
cool.
Talk Houston sports for 10 minutes with 2 guys that I've been listening to since I was a teenager.
Come on.
Shout out to Joel Blank, man. He used to be the program director for the Houston Rockets, and he does a great job on ESPN now. He's been a really good mentor to me as well. But I mean, that after that, bro, you couldn't have told me nothing. And I didn't end up winning the competition, which was disappointing at the time, but I was really proud of myself. And once the disappointment wore off, I was able to just kind of soak in the whole process. Starting at 19, the first time my brother-in-law showed up to my doorstep and said, hey man, we're going to start a podcast. All the stuff that I went through in between, all the times I wanted to quit, all the times I frankly did quit and then come back. It just kind of all came full circle. And that's when I realized there's nothing that's going to happen to me, knock on wood, that's going to make me quit this again, because I've experienced a plethora of different obstacles that I have successfully overcome and got to this point. So whatever it is that comes up in the future, we'll figure it out. I'm going to keep grinding. I'm going to keep doing my thing. And I couldn't take no for an answer though, Ozeal. I asked Joe George, who's the assistant program director at ESPN. I kind of got a hold of him early. I said, no matter what happens in this final, can I please meet with you? And this is important. I hope your listeners will take this in, because there's that self-doubt group of people who have too much self-doubt. And then there's the people who are too prideful to listen to critique and criticism. And I've run into some of those people as well. I asked Joe George, I said, regardless of what happens, if I don't win this thing, can we get together? I need to know what I could have done better, what I did wrong, how I can better position myself if I decide to do something like this again in the future. And he was more than gracious and willing to do so. In the process, one of the other finalists who was very, very disappointed, a young kid named Ruben Calvillo, who was now, you know, I hate to jump the shark, but I'm working with him. He was there. Right? He was very disappointed that he lost. And I immediately walked up to him, and this is another thing, man. Don't be afraid to collaborate with people who are better than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're out there. Like, they're out there. And don't let your pride get in front of you, because I reached out to him and I said, hey man, you killed it. Honestly, if it was up to me, I thought you won the thing. Let's get together and let's collaborate, man. Let's do something together. Let's make ESPN wish that they would have selected us, right? And so we were in that mindset already. And I asked Joe George, I said, can Ruben join us for this meeting? So we got together for breakfast a couple of days later. And he gave me some good criticism, some good feedback, and I had to take it. But the good thing is because I could have just walked away, Ozeal, and be like, man, I lost. That voice could have come back. I knew I wasn't good enough. And I could have just walked away from it. But this mind shift that I had at this point, like I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I was confident enough to believe in my ability. I just knew, okay, I got this far. If I can just get a little bit better, maybe next time I'll do even better. And that, if you know the person that we're talking about that I was before, that would have never happened. So he gave us some good criticism, but he said, look, man, have you guys considered doing something together? Maybe if you guys link up together. I think one of the advantages the people who won had is there was a duo of them, and me and Ruben were both solo acts, which is challenging at times. Trust me, sometimes you feel like you're talking to yourself, and sometimes you are talking to just yourself.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, he said, why don't you guys link up together? And bro, I'm telling you, we jumped right on top of that. Me and Ruben had the idea and a logo, a name for the Twin Toros podcast in less than 24 hours, man. Like we were ready to seize that opportunity. So a couple of weeks later, ESPN finalized that they would put our podcast on their YouTube channel every week.
Look at that.
And so the Twin Toros podcast is a thing we've done. This is going to be our 14th episode. Actually drops a little bit later today. So it's a Houston Texans based podcast. So I didn't get my original show, which I still do on ESPN. But like
the Houston State of,
I could have gave up. I could have said, there's the answer I needed.
Right.
Not good enough. Let me just pack it up and go home. And I didn't do that, and another opportunity came out of it. So I'm really grateful for it. And I'm grateful to ESPN, like I said, for embracing the podcasters. There's a lot of really good creators in this city, man. You know that for sure. And the fact that I made it as far as I did, though, it just told me, like, I'm built for this. I can do this.
I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised.
It.
And I'm glad that you pushed through, and no surprise that you made it to the Final Four. And, you're still, coming out on top, after. And, again, all the success with Twin Toros and everything that you're doing now. Man, listen, I want to talk to you a little bit about a couple of things that I want to point out. Some takeaways, just collaboration, the importance of collaboration and community. Your community came and rocked with you when you needed them most. I think a lot of the times it's the importance. People kind of throw the word community, especially now in these days. I've been all about community, as you know, for a minute now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now a lot of creators, it's like a big phrase, like, oh, community. But I'm like, what does that really, really mean? And there's people that are going to like and share and kind of the casual fans. And then you got the super fans. And these are the people that are going to be your diehard, loyal fan base.
Yeah.
That when it comes down to it, they may have the numbers, but when it comes to, like, you may be small, but you're mighty. And the fact that you have people that are going to come out and support you. And I think that's what you had. Yeah. And also just the collaboration. And I heard a quote, man, it was actually at a podcast, actually with Rob Elasabas mentioned this. I had him on a podcast, and he said, competition happens at the bottom, collaboration happens at the top.
Yeah.
And there's that basically just defines a two type of mindsets, right? The people that are always just trying to claw at each other. If you notice, they won't get far, but the collaborators, and I saw that early on. I remember I had a conversation with you at Georgia Brown convention when we were doing a panel. And I'm like, yo, collaborate, fam. I'm like, I saw it. I'm like, collaborate, find out who are the other heavy hitters like you.
No, you
collaborate. So I was happy to see that. I remember I told you that.
You're absolutely right. And in line with that, I want to shout out the Athletically Declined Sports. Those are the guys who won.
Okay.
They've been extremely gracious to us. And when ESPN decided to bring us on, they embraced it. They didn't see us as competition, or they didn't feel any type of way about it. As a matter of fact, we're linking up with them this Thursday to do a live watch party on ESPN Houston of the Thursday Night Football game. So talk about collaboration, man. I mean, they were, and man, they've offered to, help us with promotion, and because they have their own studio in League City and everything. So that's why I say, man, don't be afraid to collaborate, or don't be afraid to associate with people who might be maybe a little bit better than you. I know there's people in this industry who are better at this than I am. but I'm going to keep getting better. I do know that. And for me, I don't prey on anybody's downfall. There's enough room at the table for everybody to eat, man.
That's right.
And, you know, my partner, he's a little bit younger, man. He's 26, so he's a dog, man, but he's a beast, man. I got to shout out Ruben Calvillo. This young man, he lives off of his YouTube money already. He's 26 years old. He's got several thousand followers on YouTube. He's just a grinder, man. And he's taught me a lot. You know, I'm 40 years old, and, you know, I try to think of myself as the old head, the big bro, but I've actually learned a lot from him too. And that's another thing, you know, him being 26, me being 40, I could be like, youngster, you don't know anything.
Right.
But it's just not true, man. He's already, you know, advanced in this space, you know, beyond my wildest dreams. And in a lot of ways, I'm kind of riding off his coattails with this Twin Toros thing. But I'm soaking in everything that I can. I'm learning about SEO online, SEO on YouTube, like as much as I possibly can learn. And you're never going to stop learning. And the day you stop learning is the day you stay stagnant. So just keep taking in all of that information that you can. Try to be better every day and just keep grinding, man. That's the only advice I give to anybody who's trying to do this. And, you know, we all run into a wall at some point. You've done it too, Ozeal. Like, we all hit that wall. And that's the moment that it really tests your passion. Like, do I really care about this? The people who don't really care about this, that's when they quit. The people who really do care about it, like you said, they find a way to, for me, you know, I had to rebrand and do something a little bit different, but I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Drop some gems there, man. You know, you're doing the thing. You're definitely, you know, you're a creator, you're live streams, you're collaborating. I'm curious to know, and I think this is something that a lot of creators could relate to, you know, and would want to know, is doing, you know, having a wife and having kids and having the live streams and collaborating, having your own show and a co-host. How are you finding yourself, and how do you balance life right now with everything you got going on?
It's still a challenge, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I was never a calendar person. I am definitely a calendar person.
We're like one of those like schedulers, like you're like just dialed in.
That's not my style. That is my wife to a T. And once again, I can't give her enough credit.
Yeah.
Ozeal, I wouldn't be doing any of this without her support.
Support is important, man.
There's days she'll leave work early to go pick up my kids so that I can do podcast recording. Or there's days that, you know, it's the weekend. We should be doing this together. We should be doing that together. Well, I got this thing going on. So she's been extremely supportive. I will say, do not neglect the things that are important, though, because it will become more and more difficult for your support system to support you if you are not pouring into them still. Show that appreciation for the fact that they are supporting you by pouring into them. I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend, other than watching the Texans game, I'm like, I'm not working. Been working a lot. I took that time, me and my wife, we went to a buddy's house. We watched the Texans game. I honestly sat in the backyard chatting it up with him at the barbecue pit. You know, I'm recording the game at home. I can go back and watch it and make sure I know everything that I need to know for work. Let me pour into the people who support me. And I think that's really, really important, because if you get too caught up in the thing, that support will probably start to fall off. And that's obviously not the reason you want to pour into them. It's important to have real friends. It's important to have real support, because especially, you know, as you start to get more successful, you will run into people who are just trying to eat off of you because they want to get what you got. And I've even run into that a little bit, unfortunately. Some people that I thought were really good friends of mine turned out to kind of show their face once I started having some real success in this medium. So it does take a balance, man. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm not going to pretend that I got it all figured out. I remembered to put you on the calendar today. So that's why I was here on time. You know, who knows what happened 6 months ago, right?
So scheduling now. So are you like, what are you doing habit wise to make sure you're scheduling everything out? Obviously allocating time for your family, but also making sure that you're scheduling the important things as a creator. What are you doing?
Yeah, for sure. So I try to make sure that podcast stuff, this is the allotted time for that. Family time, this is the allotted time for that. So for instance, the Twin Toros, we release that every Tuesday. At 7:30, they do a live premiere on YouTube where you upload a video and then set it as a premiere. But we record that on Mondays. Now my work schedule varies, so I'm thankful to Ruben that he's very flexible. Once again, he he's a content creator. That's what he does for a living. That's his 9 to 5. So he's very flexible, because if I'm working on a Monday during the day, then we might have to record that video that evening. Or if I'm off that day, we can maybe record a little bit earlier. If I'm working nights, then we have to record it earlier. So shout out to him for being flexible. But that's one of the things, you have to look ahead. Don't do it at the last minute. So I kind of have the next month to 2 months of, this is when I'm recording. This is when I'm collaborating with this person. And
So you
there's a
got
little
set
bit
days.
of, yeah,
Everything is set.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
there's a little bit of freelance, I want to shout out to Lashard Binkley as well. I'm giving a bunch of people flowers on the show, and I apologize if it gets a little long-winded, but he was the first Houston media member to give me an interview on my Nobody Knows Anything About podcast. And he wrote for the Dream Shake at the time, which is a Houston Rockets website that I've been reading since I was a shorty, man. And he came on and he told me, hey, when I got started in this thing, I reached out to people too. They ghosted me. I promised myself I wasn't going to do that to anybody who reached out to me. And this is what I tell you, man. Podcasting really opened up so much, man. And I hope that people understand the power of podcasting, because that is what opened up a chance for me to start writing for the Dream Shake myself. That's what I write a column for the Dream Shake. Now he moved on to Sports Illustrated. Maybe I'll follow him over there one day. Who knows?
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he moved on to SI.
But you're connected. You're connected. Like, that's what
I'm rubbing elbows with the right people. And it's just taking a chance, man. It's, once again, telling that voice in the back of your head to just shut up. You're not telling me the truth. You're lying to me. And once I did that, but yeah, it's just, he, every now and again, I'll randomly call him because maybe I need a Rocket story, and let's get on and talk Rockets real quick. So the point is I am scheduling most of this. There is a little bit of off the cuff, every now and again, but for the most part, just a month, 2 months ahead, try the best you can to at least have an idea of, this is when I'm doing this is when I'm doing that. Cause I also work a full-time job, which is difficult. So, and honestly, the full-time job being on the schedule that I'm on does help a little bit, because at least I know, okay, these are my days off from work. So these are the days I need to get these things done. So that does help a little bit, honestly, to help me keep my schedule. And I'm thankful that I do a job where my schedule allows me to do things on the side. And I'm grateful to my employer for understanding. Sometimes they want me to come in on a day off and I'm like, sorry, I got this going on. So it's been an awesome year, man. And I know the next challenge is coming. It's on its way, man. When everything's going well, you're kind of just like waiting for that shoe to drop, right? And I know it's coming, but what I'm grateful for is that I've been through it. Now I know whatever it is, like, I'm going to be able to handle it. Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. There you go. That's it. We'll figure it out. What's your goal as a content creator and for the show that you're doing? Are you trying to go full-time creator? Is this something that, or are you good with the balance of having a day job? And like, what's the North Star here for next?
No, I would love to do this full-time. My wife and I are actually getting ready to file paperwork for our LLC, Stevenson and York Enterprises.
Okay.
York is her maiden name, and she has no more males in her family. And the same, me and my brother are the last 2 male. We both had girls that bear our last name. So the name Stevenson and her maiden name York probably disappear with us. So we got our heads together. Originally, it was just going to be Stevenson Media, but I have so much profound respect for the man who helped raise the woman who's been supporting me through this whole thing. When she asked me, hey, can we put Dad's name on it? I said, absolutely. Like, there's no reason in the world I want his name to go away any more or less than I want my family name to go away. So we're getting ready to file LLC paperwork for Stevenson and York Enterprises. I will be doing business as Stevenson Media.
Okay,
I've got a website that's on the way.
Oh, okay. You got plans, man. You got plans over there, bro.
Yeah. I'll be doing I'm writing for the Dream Shake, and I'm going to continue doing that. But I'm right now actually in search of some freelance writers who would like to. I know written media is probably a dying platform, but I'm a romantic, bro. Like I read the newspaper still every now and again. I have a cron.com subscription. I'm 40 years old, so I still enjoy the art of reading an article, and that's why I'm so blessed to be writing for the Dream Shake. But yeah, I'm trying to get some writers to come write for my website, for my blog. The goal was really to land a media credential so I can go cover these teams. And that's why I'm so fortunate, because I could possibly get that through the Dream Shake. I just started, so I'm kind of the new guy, so they haven't figured out if they can trust me that much yet. But even also ESPN, if this thing goes well and it keeps growing the way it has, ESPN Houston will give us credentials to cover Rockets, Astros, Texans as well. So
yeah, I'm waiting for CJ Stroud to get on your podcast,
I'm
man.
doing the thing, man. I'm trying.
Making it. I know
If
it's going to happen
I'm
sooner
not
than
allowed
later.
to reach out to the team, but if anybody knows his agent, holler at you. They told me
sure get it out
specifically,
there.
don't reach out to the team to ask for players, but if you can get a hold of their agent, I'm like, hey, let's make it happen. But
yeah,
man, I love it. And once again, this all started with, even when I was doing Smells Like on my own, I didn't really discover the power of community until I got with Pod Houston and the group of individuals that you introduced me to, Ozeal. So I have to give you and that group so much credit. And this is what I will say to creators: don't let this be the reason that you do it, but if you support others, it's going to come back to you tenfold. When I first started following the Pod Houston group, man, I made a point, and I still do this, I made a point to go in that group. You guys do a Freeform Friday every week where everybody can put their podcast in there and kind of promote themselves a little bit. And I'm thankful that you guys do that, because I gained a lot of listeners from that myself. But I try to go in there and I find 1, 2, 3 podcasts to make sure, let me add that to my playlist. And then the important thing for me to do after I do that, don't just listen but I try to reach out to that person and let them know, hey, I listened to your podcast and I really enjoyed it. I don't really take that opportunity to do a lot of, constructive criticism. I just want to empower them to say, hey, somebody's listening and somebody's appreciating what I'm doing. And I feel like not enough creators do that. And sometimes I get it, man. You get caught up in the work and you worked really hard and you want people to see it. You want people to listen. You want people to watch. You want people to support you. But make sure you're supporting other people too. And like I said, don't let it be the reason that you do it, but I promise you it's going to come back to you tenfold. If you show up for other people, people are going to start showing up for you.
Well said. I think that's such an important reminder for all creators who are on the journey that we get that we're all trying to build, but part of that building is giving back and helping others build as well. And a comment goes a long way. Subscribing to a YouTube channel goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Leaving a rating and review on a podcast goes a long way. Doing something like you did, which is like a direct outreach where you're like, hey, I really do appreciate and respect what you're doing as a creator to creator.
Yeah.
I think it goes a long way. So I love that you said that. I think that's just such a powerful reminder and a great way.
I took it for granted, man. I really did.
Man. I think a lot of us do. I think we get caught up in what we do. Like, we get, I think it's important. And that's the reason why, Nick, that I'm glad that you said that. Even me as a creator, like, we get lost in the journey, that we often forget these little things that really mean a lot, that go above and beyond, Yeah.
If somebody comments on your stuff, man, just hit them back up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It goes, I can't tell you how many people now rock with me hardcore just because I sent one message telling you, hey, thank you for listening, or thank you for calling into the show. And I mean, these people are lifers. When we finished Smells Like Middle-Aged Spirit podcast, man, I did a little tribute video at the end of the very last episode. And I had people text messaging me and like, man, I'm crying. And talking about what their favorite episode was. You mentioned something earlier that was very profound. I thought, we were small, but we were mighty. I did just below 20,000 downloads on the audio side, probably another maybe 2,000, close to 3,000 views on YouTube. It wasn't anything massive, but those few people who rocked with that show, man, they loved it and they appreciated it. And we became like a family. And I'm still cool with some of those people to this day, even though I don't do that show anymore. So it's a really cool thing, man. And I'm hoping the way I represent Houston and the way I ride H-Town till we drown, I'm hoping to do that same thing in the Houston sports market, man. It's a little bit tougher of a market. There's a lot of competition, and but I'm starting to make my way, man. I'm starting to. So it's one of those things that once again, tell that voice, leave me alone. I'm doing good.
That's right.
I'm not, I thought I would transition from Smells Like and just do the exact same thing in my next podcast. I didn't realize how special Smells Like was, because it didn't take off as fast as with the second one as the first one did. But you have to keep grinding, man. And I'm having such a fun time doing it. Don't be a slave to the numbers. If the content is good, if you can watch it over again and you've already had the conversation, but you enjoy listening to it a second time, then it's a good podcast, man. Just keep grinding and keep doing your thing.
One of the things that, and I'll leave it at this, man, is just, there was an interview, I think it was on a podcast, or I heard him somewhere, but it was with Tom Brady, and they were asking about like just his level of greatness and how he views, his career. And he was like, yo, man, whenever, they saw how he would get just, he had this unmovable, unbreakable, like just relentless, just one bad play, and he'll just get back up and just go for it again. And they were like, yo, and he was like, man, I don't dwell on the last play. He was like, yeah, I might overthrow and I fumble and all. He goes, but I'm on to the next. Like, while everybody else dwells. And I think that was a testament to his true greatness. Very much similar to how athletes approach different plays and fumbles and mistakes. And but if you allow that, imagine them, they're constantly dealing with critics. Imagine there's people like you, right? But it's part of your job and in the newspapers and all that. But imagine what they go through. And there's something I feel that's super beautiful and empowering and just a reminder what athletes go through that we can embrace as creators. And I'm using this analogy because you're in the sports space, but taking that mindset of a professional athlete where it's just like they can't dwell on what they did on the last play. Get back to work. Get back to work. Let's go. There's constant improvement by the second. I mean, they're moving. And I think for creators, I think we need to take that approach that nothing's going to be perfect. Even the great athletes out there, they go through challenges in all the time. But what separates the greats from the average is the greats are willing to get back on that next play. And I think that's what Tom Brady was talking about. He's like, I'm on to the next. Like, I'm already thinking about the next play while everybody else is dwelling on the last. And I thought that was such a profound statement. That was like, that's it. We can apply that to life and everything that we do. So
yeah, for sure.
Me. All right, bro. This was great, man. This is from creator to creator, bro. I know this is fun. This is what I wanted to do, Nick. And for everybody, this is just me to bring on creators, everyday creators. We have day jobs, we have family, we have kids. We're in the grind, we're in the trenches, but we're passionate and we got a vision and we're collaborating and we're building communities. And I just wanted to create content that's relatable. So hopefully everybody who watched or listened, this provided some value to you. And of course, leave a comment down below because comments matter, and subscribe. And of course, make sure you check out my boy. Again, he's a co-founder, producer, co-host at the Twin Toros. If you are a Houston Texans fan, this is a must-watch, must-listen podcast. And of course, if you're not a Houston Texans fan, Dallas Cowboys fans out there, I know you may not watch this show, but you can still tap in and see what greatness sounds and looks like, right, Nick?
I welcome all sports fans to Houston Sports Nation. It's fine. I'm a diplomatic leader as the president of Houston.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I wanted to say real quick too, man.
Talk to me, man.
Anybody who's listening who has struggled with any of that self-doubt or overwhelmed, man, I know they have you as a resource, man, but it takes a village. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, have any questions, concerns, like want to figure out just how I stayed the course, man, they can always reach out to me as well, man. I'll leave you the link to all my socials and everything so that you can put it in your description or however you want to distribute that. But and just thank you so much again for everything you've done for me, and thank you so much for opening up. You opened up the door, but I had to run through it, right? So, and I just appreciate everybody who supported me over this past year. Shout out to my wife, shout out to Pod Houston. All of you guys are great. And then the Podfather himself, man, Ozeal, doing the damn thing. I'm so proud of you, man, and I'm thankful for you.
I received that, brother. We'll leave it at that. Peace, man.